Hello and welcome to a new video here on my channel. Today I'm presenting to you part 3 of the story Clone Revolution. I hope you like it, and if you like it, leave a comment down below and recommend my YouTube channel to your friends. I'm giving my best to write the stories on my channel, and I hope it can grow into more than just a hobby of mine. So I want a little help from you. I want that you recommend my channel to your friends. It's not easy to write so much stories and translate them into English. And then let's start right with the story right away. Let's go.
Time continued to pass in the same rhythm as before, and even though the Laplaxia researchers kept finding new ways to punish her when she disobeyed an order, it was unpleasant but still bearable. The other test subjects were clearly unhappy, but none of them were strong enough to escape. If I play this smart, I could use them as a distraction. If I send a clone through the vents into the control center, I could disable the collars and free everyone, but how do I do that? Rouge wondered as she realized this could be a plan. If she improved that idea, the staff would be too busy hunting or killing the freed prisoners to pay much attention to a single small woman. The vents were built so they couldn't be opened from inside the cells and rooms, which actually made it easier to reach and open a door from the ventilation system. "Hey, watch where you're going, Runt," said a rough man with more scars than most around here. The man was missing an eye and his gaze was focused on the one that remained. He was muscular and noticeably taller than Rouge. Their eyes met when she looked up and she stepped back quickly, but his stare didn't linger on her face, only on her breasts, clearly visible through the one-piece suit. The fact that Rouge wasn't wearing a bra hit her harder than ever. It made her stomach twist. If every woman felt this when they're stared at, I get it. Rouge thought as she tried to step aside. But the man didn't intend to let her go. The presence of the other men and women around them didn't matter to him at all. He seemed so obsessed with the idea of finally having his fun with a woman that he'd do it in front of everyone. Yet when he reached for Rouge, a brief sense of danger surged through him. He'd survived long in the slums for a reason. When a man like him has learned anything, it's to trust his instincts, and his instincts said to stop. Whether it was lust or reason telling him that a single girl, maybe 15, wasn't worth the risk, he couldn't say. Still, he kept walking toward her. I can smell him. He reeks, Rouge thought as she stumbled back, trying not to drop her tray from the cafeteria. The food wasn't much better than tasteless broth, but it was slightly superior and at least different. As Rouge recoiled, she felt it again, the world shifting, time tilting. Decisions branched off into a rapidly increasing cascade of effects. The snowball, or butterfly, effect. A butterfly flaps its wings. Then it became painfully clear to Rouge that the past timeline was useless. Things that should have happened there would never occur now. Then I guess I'll have to break from the script, Rouge thought as she felt how terrifying it was not to know what should happen. But that was supposed to be normal in this world. "Hey, leave her alone, you pervert, she's a child," said a woman's voice, full of hate toward the man. There was no trace of noble gallantry or heroism, only hatred and disgust in the red-haired woman's eyes. Regardless of her motives, Rouge thought it was still a rescue, and that complicated her plans a little. Someone else had acted here, besides the odd werewolf guard Martin who had helped her before. Knowing she planned to use them all as cannon fodder while she ran away hit Rouge like a stab to the heart. Rouge felt the oppressive atmosphere of the big cafeteria and the many people in it, each with their own interests, and in the next moment the guilt she'd felt evaporated as she watched the red-haired woman stand up and place herself between Rouge and the pervert. It was ridiculous, Rouge realized, to have guilt about plans in a place like this, basically a thrown-together heap of people no one would miss, a place whose atmosphere felt more prison than anything else. The logic of this world, the rule of the stronger, pressed down on her. I really wonder why I forgot this lesson. The law of the strongest rules. The old Rouge from that timeline, the life I lived, the parents I watched die, she knew that. Maybe it was the man's life, the soul that merged with Rouge, that couldn't fully accept the rule of the strong. Anyway, I'm a mixture of both and I should make my own experiences so I won't regret who died, whether one or both souls died and then created me. Should I just accept that both the man and the old Rouge are dead and I am simply the new Rouge? I don't know how many times I have to think this, but it doesn't get easier, they both feel so alive. Okay, focus on something else now. Rouge thought as she used the time the man and woman were talking to slip away. From the corner of her eye in the cafeteria's harsh light, she noticed the woman wore the same clothing as she did and her nipples showed through the one-piece jumpsuit. It wasn't that Rouge felt compassion here, not in this situation. It was analytical. She wanted to understand the significance. Why did the women here only wear basic underwear like panties and not bras? Clearly it wasn't sexual. Most of the scientists were as emotionally cold and uninterested as a block of ice. Rouge suspected it wasn't an accident that the researchers were asexual. Any sexual distractions or fetishes would ruin experiments and undermine control. It was cold logic driving these people and Laplaxia itself. The clatter of a metal can on the floor pulled Rouge from her thoughts. Someone had dropped their trash. No one seemed to care to pick it up, which, given the hall's size, would be a chore. Rouge had expected at least the humanoid figures, those that didn't speak, to handle cleaning, but only the corners and edges of the cafeteria were dirty and the tables were relatively clean, which suggested that something did keep the room reasonably tidy. The scientists probably didn't want their test subjects falling ill. It took only a few seconds for Rouge to find a slightly more secluded spot from which she could watch the scuffle escalate while eating. The man had clearly taken a few hits, the woman had not, or she had withstood them. She might have a talent, hard to tell. Man, why is it so damn hard in this world to tell who has a talent and who doesn't? There are no detectors or reliable ways to find out except by using another talent to affect one. I get the feeling that even in the other timeline, after years of development, there wasn't a way to reliably manipulate talents. Rouge thought as she felt one of her clones reach a position in the ventilation shaft where it couldn't proceed. It reported a problem, and for a second Rouge focused on it while she ate. This is actually interesting. I feel like my clone could do something else here, like a connection that lets me really be present. As if it counts toward my ability, as if I'm there. Okay, that's weird. Rouge thought calmly as she sensed her power behaving a bit like quantum entangled particles or like quantum mechanics allowing existence in multiple places at once. It wasn't far-fetched to suspect that talents which don't fully follow the rules of magic might obey some rules of quantum mechanics. At least it felt that way to Rouge. When she focused on the sensation of her talent, it felt as if the ability existed not only in her body but also, at the same time, in all her clones, something that definitely hadn't been true in the past timeline. In that other timeline, the old Rouge's power had been entirely different. This was something the new Rouge now felt instinctively. Okay, that's interesting. From the information I have, I can infer the old Rouge in that other timeline. This time crap is confusing. Couldn't use her clones as extensions the way I can now. Those clones were puppets, they couldn't clone again like I can. I can still clone objects, which apparently the other Rouge couldn't do. So I can conclude I really can do what I suspect. Now the question is how. Rouge wondered as she tried to figure out the method. It proved surprisingly odd to use the same ability again through one of her clones. Interestingly, the magic consumed was still drawn from her own reserves, not from the clone itself. That suggested every clone remained linked to the original or to the same magical reservoir, they didn't each possess separate magic pockets. Every casting by any clone drained the same energy source. They were connected to the same well of magic, which made the whole situation far more complicated and problematic. Shit. Now I have multiple bodies, but they all consume my magic, and I'm more limited than I thought. That means I'd need far more magical power than others. If I wanted an army of clones to cast spells, I'd need magic for every single cast from thousands of clones. That's way more problematic. Even if I had more magic than a whole country, it'd suck if I burned it faster than I used it. Okay, that's a bit dramatic. Rouge thought. When Rouge looked again at the woman she'd been watching, she saw the fight was over. The redhead had beaten the pervert. He was lying there, defeated and surrendering. It was still a little humiliating for Rouge to sit there with a tray, but nothing worse had happened, aside from memories she didn't want to think about. The problem wasn't only that men were obsessed with her chest, the soul of the man whose body she inhabited still found it interesting in a weird way. The new Rouge didn't actually know how to feel about a female or male body. Right now it was far more important to focus on how to move her clone through the vent without being noticed. She couldn't simply materialize a screwdriver and take the thing apart. There wasn't enough time, and she'd have to put it back together from the inside, which might not even be possible. Rouge had to breathe. Getting nervous and stressed wouldn't help. Damn, why won't this work? I feel like I could use my clone to create another clone. Why the hell does nothing happen? I should be able to do it. Rouge thought, frustrated, after several failed attempts to have one clone spawn another. Theoretically it should work, but something else made it difficult. For a moment Rouge suspected there might be a blockade against magic use, something that could block talents that require magic. That would be a big surprise, since such a barrier appearing out of nowhere inside a vent where no one expects anyone to be would be illogical. She'd never heard of a magical barrier that simply stopped magic in a place like that. A faint shimmer of magic appeared as tiny purple-black particles materialized on the other side of the barrier and slowly formed something. It was too slow and unstable. Rouge blinked and felt her perception flicker between her real body and her clone, switching back and forth and then overlaying. Having two pairs of eyes seeing different things at once was more than confusing. When Rouge heard a clink, she briefly wasn't sure whether it was her clone or her real body that had made the sound. A second later she realized she'd accidentally dropped her fork. Managing motor data for two different bodies that were almost identical for a moment was maddening. Watching through her clone's eyes as it theoretically continued, she noticed two things. On one hand, it was possible to form another clone. On the other hand, the formation had problems. It provoked increasing headaches and sensory distortions. Concentration grew harder and harder. Everything around her blurred. This felt like her limit. Shit. This can't keep going like this, but at least I found out I can use clones as extensions of myself. They all share my talent, more or less. Or rather, my talent seems to be in a kind of superposition across multiple places at once. Don't be surprised. Given everything I've experienced, the blurred memories from another timeline, my other self's history, and the changes to my talent, this actually makes sense. It's impressive I even remember anything about quantum mechanics. Useful too, using clones to create more clones has to be part of my plan. Rouge thought as she swallowed the last bite. The rest of the day followed the same rhythm as before, training, day in, day out, a monotonous cadence of rudimentary experiments. The only standout was an experiment where she had to fight a severely weakened monster. The testing room was sterile and completely white, but it still smelled faintly of iron, blood, whether human or monster, was unclear. The room had been cleaned, giving the impression this was a trial many didn't survive. The clicking and snapping of unseen joints and perhaps even bones added an eerie atmosphere. For a second the sterile setting underscored the danger she faced. Not feeling pain was a blessing because she could keep fighting while badly injured, but it was also a curse. She wouldn't know if she were bleeding out unless someone constantly monitored her. There was no warning light or signal to start the test. Then, suddenly, the grating at the far end of the room fell away and a long, dark shape shifted in the shadows. Too cold, glowing blue eyes opened, and faster than Rouge could react the creature lunged. It looked like a white-blue blur in motion. It struck quickly and precisely, and before Rouge could respond the world turned and she hung weightless for a heartbeat. Damn, I'm probably going to die if I don't do something, Rouge thought as the floor rushed up toward her. It felt like something inside the world had snapped. The magic in the air thickened and pressed down like an invisible weight on everything weaker than it. This wasn't imagination, rather, it was an instinct everyone in this world seemed to share, fear of what is stronger than you. Everything then happened very fast as a decision snapped into place. It was risky, but better than being eaten by that monster. Rouge felt something stirring in her bread basket, hope of getting out of this. In the moment before impact the room grew darker and the shadows shifted. For the briefest instant, so short most people would miss it, the shadows gathered at a point and a figure formed there, a perfect duplicate of Rouge. Every hair and physical feature matched exactly. The clone stood in a position meant to break the fall. The task was simple, catch the original body. When Rouge and her clone collided, everything accelerated. It was an inelegant way to break a fall, but in that situation Rouge didn't care. She picked herself up, and the clone mirrored her. As Rouge staggered to her feet she quickly realized the exact parameters of this experiment were unclear, nobody had told them what would count as success, and that made the whole thing dangerously uncertain. Hoping for something good would be useless. The most reliable way not to die would be to kill the monster in front of her, but Rouge had no idea whether she could manage that. I'm totally screwed if that thing hits me again. I think a few ribs might be broken. I could just sacrifice my clone, but that's a problem if people see how many things I can do with my ability, cloning objects and myself. How could I pull this off? Rouge thought as she studied the creature. The monster combined features of many earthly animals, which suggested it was an alien beast from a secret world. Rouge couldn't recall the creature's name, breed, or exact traits, implying the old Rouge from the slums had never encountered it. The monster's power and speed put it somewhere in the middle danger tier, vague, because monsters are always dangerous, even the weak ones, and age matters too. Alien monsters were harder to predict than magically mutated earthly animals. A mutated koala would still have a koala's mentality and wouldn't suddenly attack people. Alien monsters, by contrast, seemed inherently hostile, stronger, more aggressive, and far more varied. Great. That doesn't change the fact this thing has claws that could slice me in half and teeth that'll turn me into mince if it bites. Lucky it rammed me with a closed snout, otherwise I'd be shredded. Rouge thought, wondering whether the monster's mouth might be unable to open or whether it had no teeth. Perhaps its jaws were damaged or the teeth removed. Why'd I assume it has sharp teeth? It looks terrifying, yes, but I haven't seen its mouth open. Rouge considered as she took in the creature's dark blue fur through the clone's eyes and watched with her real ones, trying to perceive every movement. It stood still. It seemed to have 12 legs, like a half millipede, half cat. Cat-like traits dominated. Those cold blue eyes glowed literally and frighteningly, not just metaphorically. The creature's back was studded with sharp spines and its ribs protruded outside the fur, odd but not impossible for an alien. Several long thin tails ended in blade-like tips, though the room wasn't wide enough for them to whip effectively. At that moment the clone shimmered across wall and floor and the magical pressure doubled, but this time the source wasn't the creature's aura, it came from the walls. The world around them seemed to stretch, and Rouge realized either they'd shrunk or the room had been made strangely larger. It was a technology combined with magic, a barrier easy to break from the outside but almost indestructible from within, allowing reality to be modified in specific ways. It prevented easy death, though even this paranormal tech could not make someone truly immortal. Then, in the span of a heartbeat, the monster lunged without warning and flung its jaws open. For a few moments Rouge's suspicion proved right. Multiple rows of sharp teeth were visible, teeth that moved not quite like saws, but somehow did. A loud snapping sound echoed behind Rouge as she rolled sideways and saw her clone instantly destroyed. It happened shockingly fast. The clone blackened and flickered violet for a moment, a smear of shadow and violet specks or lightning, then exploded into black-violet particles that scattered and vanished. The impact on the floor was sudden, but Rouge forced herself to roll on. Damn, I'm definitely dead in a second. Even if I use all my power I'm screwed. I can't fight a monster like this, Rouge thought as she weighed options. If the monster truly wanted her dead, fighting would be pointless. On the other hand, the researchers wouldn't simply let her die if she was valuable, they'd invest resources to exploit her if necessary. Rouge considered making another clone on the run beside her. Luckily the creature seemed to be playing with its prey, prolonging the hunt before delivering the killing blow. It also seemed to have roughly a cat's intelligence. Although it realized Rouge had spawned a clone, it couldn't reliably distinguish original from copy, alternating between chasing the clone and then the original. Its confusion suggested a lack of higher reasoning. This sucks, but it's also good it's not smarter, otherwise I'm toast. Well, I'm still screwed, but at least I can distract it, Rouge thought as she ordered the clone to make noise. Here I am, you giant cat, here I am, eat me, the clone shouted, and for a second the creature continued to track Rouge's original body and her heart dropped, then its glowing eyes swung toward the much louder target. Just as Rouge thought her trick had worked, she saw blood spray and the floor darken as something very sharp protruded from her belly where nothing sharp should be. Her legs went numb and gave out. The large amount of blood confirmed her worst fear, she was dying. Strange, I shouldn't be scared. Well, I've died once before, Rouge thought, realizing this had never happened in the other timeline. It underscored that everything was different here. For a second she heard a sound that wasn't normal. Something warm and wet soaked her one-piece suit, under which she only wore panties. Why am I thinking about my underwear while I'm bleeding out? Are the dead man's thoughts making this feel erotic, or was Rouge attracted to women before? No, Rouge had no time for love. Survival was the priority. What irony. Even if I'd used my clones more, this would still be my death. Rouge reflected as she noticed she'd been awake too long for such a large wound. But that wasn't all. The surrounding magic seemed to react and wanted to say something. Odd. I guess I should see something when I die. No light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't expect that. But there is something else. Rouge thought as she felt a gentle glow inside her. It felt like something she should have seen before but had missed. As her thoughts grew heavy she realized this must be a second talent, or something like it, which would imply the man's soul had already had a talent in another world. That, in turn, would mean talents are supernatural abilities not limited to a single reality but that at least one ability can exist in two independent realities. Darkness presses heavy and all-encompassing, growing denser by the second. It does not feel like the death the man's soul once knew when it drifted between worlds and fused with the old Rouge. It is not nearly the same. And yet it is not as terrifying as people make death out to be here, it is closer to a very short, unfocused nap. What does it feel like? I'm falling asleep, but I don't want to fully die. I still want to achieve things in life. Rouge thought, quietly, and then something shifted. The darkness slows. It loosens its grip and for a dizzying instant seems to hesitate, like a cloak that has paused before it falls again. Then the light returns, first as a harsh white glare, then as outlines, then as words. Okay, her reflexes are still there. Pupils constrict, respond to light, heartbeat present, breathing irregular but stabilizing. A male voice reports. As Rouge lies there, she feels something warm and foreign entering her arm. It is not painful, but it is profoundly unnatural. It is less the sensation of a tube in a vein and more the helplessness of being passive on an operating table, unable to know what they are putting into her bloodstream. That helplessness twists her gut. As if the humiliation they already put me through weren't enough. They have to lay me out like a piece of meat on a slab and cut me open. Even if they sew me back together later, it's disgusting. I wish I could move, then I would. Rouge thought, but the thought breaks off as sensation returns little by little. The slab beneath her is unforgiving. Laplaxia's infirmary is austere. The surface feels like hard metal warmed by body heat but not comforting. Okay, that will do for now. She should recover over the next few hours. I really don't understand which idiot approved this test. She could have died irrevocably. That was close. Even with an elixir it was risky. Too expensive for a single subject. A man complains, irritated at how many resources were used to bring her back. Not much we can change now, folks. We have other appointments. A woman's voice says, abrupt and efficient. Their footsteps recede and, like a hammer blow with no warning, something new surges through Rouge, a pressure that starts in her bones and pulses outward, the sensation of danger unfurling like a bloom in a shadowed forest. Shit, what is that feeling? I have the impression I'll definitely get hurt if I stay lying here. I need to move, but my body refuses. Rouge thinks. Every cell in her seems to scream that she must act, but her limbs are leaden, stiff and lifeless as a sack of potatoes. If I can't move myself, then I'll have to make my clones move me, if there's no other way. Rouge resolves, feeling the urgency climb. This is not simple precognition, it is a seam of sixth sense stitched to glimpses of the future. The feeling is oddly like a comic book spider sense from the man's life, not from Rouge's past, but from him. Great, so in the man's life there were comics. Is this my life now or his? Whatever, in that life there was Spider-Man and now I feel a spider sense or something like it. Rouge thinks, half amused and half frightened. Even the thought does little to calm her. There are no obvious threats in the room, so why does every nerve in her body shout that she is in immediate peril? God damn it, I don't know what's happening and my magic won't respond. Ether, whatever I call it, my energy is sluggish, just waking up. Why won't my cloning ability react? Am I exhausted? No, I should have enough power left for a few clones. Rouge thinks, as urgency and confusion war inside her while the precise nature of the danger remains maddeningly unclear. When the magic begins to stir and pulse it feels as if something living is moving. But the events do not wait for her recovery. A blast strikes the building, followed by a deafening crash and a wave of heat. Everything goes black for a second, the lights never come back on. What the hell was that? Rouge wonders as she tries to look, but her body will not move more than a few millimeters. Even though Rouge can hardly hear because of the ringing in her ears, one thing stays clear in her mind. Whether that's because her body hadn't taken as much damage as she feared or for some other reason, she can't say. I have to see and I have to be able to move, Rouge thinks, and with a reach toward her talent the shadows around her begin to stir. Shit, we're under attack, someone yells. Who is it? Another asks. The bark of gunfire cuts off the panicked scientist's words. No matter how hard Rouge tries to pull herself together, nothing seems to work. The first clone forms and almost immediately dissolves. It becomes quickly obvious how much harder it is to concentrate and shape a clone when one's body is this weakened. The shadows assemble into a shape and then fall apart halfway through. Slowly, however, feeling returns to Rouge's legs. At least that, she mumbles as she tries to move. Danger, cry every instinct and every fiber of Rouge's body. She just manages to shove her legs aside so gravity does the rest and pulls her off the slab. As the dull impact hits, a wave of heat lashes over her and bathes everything in an orange light. Shit, what was that? Rouge asks as she tries to turn her head, blood dripping from a wound. But when she sees the charred patch where she had just been lying, her head wound is quickly forgotten. This is emphatically not a time to stay on the floor. The gunshots and screams form a terrible symphony that underscores the urgency. I can't form a clone right now. Okay, then they'll have to be crutches, Rouge thinks as she tries to shape them from shadow matter. As if the magic were only waking up late, a figure forms out of shadow, purple flames and light, an exact duplicate down to the green eyes and silver hair. The clone, K1, moves without a command and goes to the original. Come, K1 says, and lifts Rouge up onto its shoulders. Wait, did K1 just speak without me ordering it? Rouge thinks as the building trembles and K1 almost loses its grip. Why are these monsters here? These are 3-digit ranked, we're totally screwed, a voice shouts nearby. In the face of the pure chaos erupting through Laplaxia's corridors, Rouge decides to try to form another clone and send it out before she gets torn apart without ever seeing what's happening. The regular flashes of light and the smell of acid are something else eating into stone paint a grim picture in her head. After a precious 15 seconds, a new Rouge, K2, forms and the chaos draws closer. Ha! Keep trying to fight, says a rough voice like sandpaper. What the hell is going on, and what is that voice? Rouge thinks. Hey you, Researcher 4, where's A.024? I'm here to find her, so answer up, the gruff male voice calls. I'm not telling you anything, you monster, the researcher replies. Wrong answer. Next. The harsh voice says as the sound of cracking bones echoes and something wet and horrible splatters. Rouge doesn't want to know the source, while her second clone K2 peeks around the corner of the infirmary corridor. What K2 sees looks more like a battlefield than a secret research facility. The walls are perforated by projectiles and energy blasts, part of a wall has been melted into rivers of glowing metal. Such energy beams would burn clean through a human without giving them a chance. Rouge thinks this could mean the attackers have a mage capable of manipulating plasma and focusing heat on a pinpoint, or they're armed with high-tech plasma weapons. Either way it's bad. A stray shot means instant death. Hey, watch how you squash the ants, or my dress will get some of that disgusting brain matter on it. Ah, I've got entrails on my shoe, says a delicate, almost melodic voice that doesn't belong in this place. I do my job, you do yours. Keep hacking the surveillance so the rest of Laplaxia doesn't notice our breach. I do my part, replies the rough, crude voice, more like rasping stone than human speech. When Rouge realizes these people are not just looking for her but have other objectives, a cold shiver runs down her spine as a blurred memory of the old Rouge surfaces. It's simple to understand. Individuals with double-digit ranks in the top 100 are among the 100 most powerful fighters in the world. That includes government operatives and independent strong figures, criminals, warlords and other dangerous people. 3-digit ranks imply top 1,000, which still means any of these attackers could shred an untrained girl like her in seconds. Oh holy shit, I'm so fucked if they find me. I don't even know if they'll rescue me in any conventional sense or just stick me in another lab. I can't risk being captured by anyone, even if I might die trying to escape. What do I do if I find one of the researchers? I swore I'd take revenge, but I don't know if I'll have the guts to kill them if I want to keep living. I've pictured it a million times but doing it will be different, Rouge thinks, noticing that her heart is either too tangled in other feelings or she simply feels nothing at the thought of killing an enemy. Whether Rouge is too stressed to care or whether she'll truly be able to kill when it comes down to it, she can't say. The smell of blood, fire and electricity in the air, combined with the steady rat-tat of gunfire in nearby corridors, paints a bad picture. Fuck. I can't make up my mind. My body still feels sluggish. At least I can move my legs now, but I feel so weak, like I've lost all strength and I recover too slowly, Rouge thinks as K1 helps her through the infirmary door and into the corridor. K2 has already moved a little toward the voices on the left. Could find a good hiding spot. For now the ventilation system is definitely not ideal, it could be damaged and who knows what the attackers will do, Rouge thinks with her heart racing. Although the sensations perceived by the clones feel real, they're slightly less vivid than the smell of blood and burnt ash in the air. I found the server room position, but I fear Laplaxia's security will be set to destroy their research so it doesn't fall into enemy hands, a woman's voice reports, now much clearer. As K2 leans around the corner and uses a mirror to peek, the original Rouge recognizes who the attackers are. Rosenberg. Those two are members of a notorious terrorist group, the Freeborn. A very dangerous crew of killers, terrorists and so-called heroes. They remind me of chaotic kids who shoot everyone not on their non-kill list. Like children but immensely deadlier. Kind of Deadpool-ish. They're a mix of races, a troll, a fae, an elf, a dwarf, and who knows what else. How did they even come together? Why are the two of them alone in this corridor? Looks like Berg has Rose's back. Ridiculous code names, Rouge thinks, stepping back. If this group wants something from her it probably isn't slavery, they don't do that. It could be anything from a contract killing to recruitment. Rouge isn't eager to find out what these terrorists want. Whether they want to recruit her or kill her, anything is possible. Either way the sensible move is to put as much distance between herself and them as possible. Okay, plan. Put distance between us and run as fast as possible, Rouge thinks, using her talent to create what she needs beside the clones. Soon a reddish staff, a rubber band, and a few more clones materialize, bringing the total number of Rouges to 7. But as Rouge begins to organize her thoughts, she hears the thing she didn't want to hear. "Hey, that over there is AO24, the Phi says, hovering and pointing at K2. The hulking troll, its muscles bulging, turns and his eyes flash. The fact that his hands are stained with blood does nothing to soften his brutal presence. "Run, K1, Rouge orders mentally as she and her remaining clones spring the other way. Running while carrying is awkward and clumsy, and being carried by 2 clones would look ridiculous. "Wait, I don't want to hurt you," the troll named Bird calls. "Who'd believe you, you meathead," the Phi with pink-red hair, calling herself Rose, snaps as she swoops toward K2. "Trust us, we won't hurt you. My friend is just not good with people, or kids of any kind," Rose says as she darts forward and hovers in front of K2 before Rouge can react. "Damn, why do they have to move so fast?" Rouge thinks, thankful in her heart that her clones can move on their own, because the overlay of multiple senses is far too confusing. If it weren't for the fact that each of her clones can walk independently and detect obstacles and danger, this would be far harder. Now she only needs to command where they should go and what they should watch for. What's really difficult is simultaneously moving K2, speaking with her mouth, moving her own body, and commanding the other clones. "Stay away from me, you oversized butterfly," K2 says in fear as she tries to run. It isn't K2's strength that matters so much as the fact they're not resorting to violence. For now, at least, they don't seem willing to take what they want by force, and that is something Rouge can exploit. She pushes herself as hard as possible to get out of the building. The layout of the floor Rouge is on feels very familiar. Good thing I sent my clones through the vents for training, Rouge thinks as she rounds another corner and, through one of her scout clones, sees a corridor full of people napping in extremely awkward positions, red tomato sauce stains on the walls and clumps of minced meat paint an ugly picture. "Pull yourself together. If I want to survive here I have to fight. I have to kill to live. I don't have the luxury of hesitation when it matters." Rouge thinks as the numbness drains almost completely from her limbs. "Take their weapons." Rouge orders, as the clone supporting her does nothing. It's not that Rouge hasn't pictured this before, but seeing it is completely different from imagining it. It's not easy to look away from the sight of the researchers and guards, but she must, even if those people had families, it's too late to change anything now. Rouge forces her attention into finding the fastest route across the building to the next row of windows and simply jumping out. It's a reckless idea, but it's the quickest way outside. I should be able to survive a fall from the 2nd floor. And if not, my clone shouldn't die instantly on impact. Then I can multiply my remaining clones there and have them form a kind of safety net. It probably won't hold long, but with several clones' strength it should catch my fall enough to avoid breaking bones. I mean, we're only on the 2nd floor, Rouge thinks as she cuts left, then right. Although the facility is basically laid out the same and it should only take 5 minutes or less to reach the other end, finding the right path proves harder because the main corridor, which Rouge had seen like a spear, has collapsed. When the sterile research walls finally give way to windows, Rouge can barely hold back a momentary relief, an expression that shows not only on her face but also on the faces of her clones, including K2, who's being held back by a strong hand from running further. Somehow I have a bad feeling about this. Is that really A.024 or someone who looks like her? She should have cloning, but that shouldn't interfere with my magical perception. Magic flows in her. She has the identical aura. If the magic signature is that identical, then she shouldn't be a clone. I've never heard of a talent that can create clones this perfect, the wild-looking Phi with red-violet-pink hair says, her hairstyle as chaotic as the rest of her outfit. I don't know, but from this close I can't smell any feelings from this girl. It's as if she doesn't have real fear or other emotions, says the troll nicknamed Mountain. Shit, they've realized number 2 isn't her real body. But thanks to the aspect of my power that lets me perceive my clone's positions at any time, I know they're far enough away. Kill yourself, clone number 2, Rouge transmits without worrying that her clone will hesitate. Rouge flinches inside her original body as clone number 2, using Rouge's power, manifests a knife out of pure stainless steel from shadow matter. Even though neither she nor the clone can feel pain, the image of a blade driving into her own heart feels unnervingly real. But Rouge has more important things to do than hesitate over unpleasant sensations. The smell of fire, ash, blood and ozone still hangs in the air even after she has moved away from the most chaotic intersection of the building. That was insane. That was a clone, someone says as clone number 2 begins to dissolve, slowly at first, then faster. The decay into violet and black sparks doesn't begin only at the clone's extremities, it also starts where the knife pierced at the heart. The clone dissolves in several places, and the shocked, confused response from the Phi is audible. Rose, the Phi, seems to have never seen a talent that can create such realistic copies. This is not normal. I've never seen anything like this, Rose breathes as the clone's ears and features fade away. The attackers are confused, too, but it doesn't matter. Nothing will remain but a trace of magic that will vanish quickly, so even the best equipment won't help track it. Okay, then my plan should work. Fire. Rouge orders as she reaches a window and clears a path with a few seconds of suppressive shots. The window, made of hardened, magically reinforced material that isn't really just glass, shatters under the barrage of projectiles and the two plasma impulse rifles' energy bursts, and Rouge breathes in the smell of fresh air as it floods the room, pushing back the odor of blood, ash and other things she'd rather not think about. Freedom seems within reach, but so much could still go wrong. Time stretches as the world sharpens around her in step with her racing heart. This is the riskiest point, but the fastest way out. Rouge orders one of her many clones to jump. At first it seems like it might fail, but as the other clones dissolve a few heartbeats later she feels her plan working. Thank God I can sense every clone's position. Otherwise I would regret this. I have to pull myself together, Rouge thinks as her heart drums in her chest. Every step toward the hole in the window speeds up, and so does her heartbeat, impossibly. It feels as if the world narrows to that one tear in the pane, one jump or nothing. As if the world were against her, the power flickers back on when she's only a meter from the opening. A silver gleam flashes dangerously as a crude metal wall drops from a hidden room above the window. But in that moment Rouge's feet already leave the floor. Damn, I'll be too slow, she thinks, bracing for impact. Then, as she nears the gap, she sees she won't hit it after all. I can make it, Rouge thinks, full of hope as she nearly slips through the hole. The air smells like freedom and hope as she sees her clones below holding the catching cloth taut. She thinks how complicated it was a few seconds earlier to imagine what materials that cloth should be and to not be distracted by other dangers inside the building. That was close, Rouge thinks as something cracks and something catches her. What the hell? Rouge wonders, the last thing she sees is the wall rushing up toward her, then everything goes dark and still. It's eerily quiet and cold, until a crack sounds. A golden light fills the darkness and, without warning, Rouge jolts awake. Her whole body drenches in sweat and her heart races, but this time it feels different. What just happened? Rouge asks as she slowly opens her eyes, and what she sees makes no sense. A taut cloth and a body that bleeds but does not dissolve. The body is not a clone, it is something else. It can only be one thing, and that thing shouldn't be possible. It's the original, which means the consciousness that thought it was Rouge is not real. Wait, am I dead? Rouge asks as her gaze moves to the other clones, but they do not react. They stand there without emotion, waiting for orders, staring at the one instance that shows feeling. Clarity washes over Rouge like cold water. Wait, the clones, the connection. They see me as the main instance like before. Okay, something's strange, but we should take the real body with us. I could still use it, Rouge thinks as she feels, beyond doubt, that she is the source of magic for all the clones. Yet the fact that her own magic is flowing now in a direction it hadn't before gives her an uneasy feeling. Am I a clone? Rouge thinks as she realizes her body is consuming magic just to continue existing. But the world does not care about Rouge and her thoughts. Gunfire rips through the air and screams echo across the courtyard. The surviving soldiers, apparently in Laplaxia's outer section, are either injured, as Rouge can see through a clone's eyes, or are busy holding attackers back from breaching other buildings. As Rouge collects her thoughts and roughly pinpoints two sources of heavy noise, an explosion suddenly tears through a large part of the building. The shockwave is bone-shaking and whips the hair of every Rouge clone. It is total chaos and barely comprehensible. So I can hear some shots toward 12 o'clock from the building. There's a wall about 4 meters high that looks unpleasant. I don't think I can get past the gun turrets, thank God most are destroyed. One turret is behind me, apparently near the residential block. I can't run along that way. The turret should still work, even if it seems inert right now. Maybe it can only shoot outward. Kind of dumb to build turrets that can fire on the main building if someone takes them over, Rouge thinks as she hides between two plain-looking containers to stay out of sight for now. The fact that Rouge occupies a clone body, a form made of shadow matter, recedes to the back of her mind for the moment. The more immediate question is the situation itself and how she can get out. She realizes she'd better understand her inner state, the state of her unnamed talent.
And that's it for today. I hope you really liked my story, part 3 of the story, Clone Revolution. And if you like it, leave a like and comment down below. And I hope we see us in the next part again. And if you want to see the newest video I uploaded, you can click on the left side on the screen. On the left side screen on the top, you can see another picture, another story I like. And on the right side of the screen, you can now also see the playlist. And until next time, take care and goodbye.